Hello everybody, it's Mr. Second Amendment, and today I'm going to be showing you how to clean an AR-15. Just got back, I was doing some tactical drills, some other things, and things got a little bit dirty, but that's just how it goes. And honestly, I think your AR should look like that if you've been doing some pretty intensive shooting. And I haven't even taken it apart yet, so who knows what it actually looks like in there. But anyway, I'm going to show you how I clean the AR-15. Now, obviously, this is not going to be the same as other people. And I'm just going to show you right now what I use. And I have it all laid out. It looks all fancy. I got my cloth, and I use that just to clean up stuff. Everyone uses a cloth of some kind. It doesn't have the lint that comes off of it. Really, anything will work. I have this is a 22 caliber bore snake. Some people are going to say, oh, you need the cleaning rods. Some people will stay away from the cleaning rods. So either way, I'm going to show you how to do it both ways. I actually like the bore snake for most applications, but you have to be careful, and we'll get to that. Next thing, this is also kind of a controversial thing. Some people say yes, some people say no. I'm one of those people where I think there is great value in having dental picks, utilizing that on a patch of some kind. These are 22 caliber patches, good for the barrel and whatnot. And using my Q-tips as well. I got my patches and dental picks and Q-tips. Those are just essential, in my opinion, when cleaning an AR-15, especially as we get into the chamber brush and some hard to get to areas. If you're not a huge bore snake fan, that's okay. I got you covered here. I've got some rods here. I have a patch head right here. It's a jag that's going to push that patch through. 22 caliber brush head here. This guy, whether you're a bore snake guy or not, you should have this. Such an invaluable tool. This is actually an M16, AR-15, M4 family of rifles chamber brush. It's got a larger steel brush portion for the actual star chamber, and then it's got a larger diameter copper brush, and that's going to be basically for your chamber. Either way, whether you're a bore snake or you're a rod guy, doesn't matter, you should always have this anyway. And a set of rods. It's just, you should always have it. I've got my two basic AR-15 brushes. I got my clear brush, which is soft, and it has, of course, the large and small sides. And then I've got the blue brush, which is going to be for, it's stiffer. It's a little bit stiffer. It's going to be a little more tough. You can also get the wire brushes, but they always get damaged and kind of bend and everything, so I don't really get those. I use brushes like this for that kind of stuff. We have fuzzy sticks, or as the rest of us know them, pipe cleaners. With any real stoner design that I've actually sat down and looked at, any stoner design, it's all about 90 degrees and small holes and rotating things, whatnot. And his style of guns, especially the AR-15, you're going to need some pipe cleaners to get into some areas. We're going to go over that. I have a blade, but more particularly, this blade has a very thin, let's see if it'll get in focus here. Alright, come on camera. But it has a very thin, from the blade edge to the non-sharp, it's very thin. Okay, and that's going to come in handy later. We'll get into that. Now, in terms of the actual solvents or oils, everything we're going to be using, I brought out 3 examples here. I got some basic hops number 9. We all know what that is, and we've seen that in some of my videos in the past. We've got some N Pro 7 gun cleaner. Actually, hops makes something very similar. It's almost the same thing in my opinion. But N Pro 7 gun cleaner, really effective stuff. And then if you want here, especially for an AR-15, we've got the Vortex C4 carbon remover. I've had great luck with all 3, but I will say that these 2 right here, the M Pro 7 and the carbon, the C4 carbon remover, M Pro 7 and Vortex are going to be a lot more effective at the stuff that's really, really built up. Hops number 9 will eventually get the job done, but in my opinion, at least what I've seen, it takes a little bit longer to get the job done. Now, in terms of lubrication, when we're done cleaning, 3 main solutions here. First and foremost, we have break-free CLP. That's going to be one of the closest things you can get to the military CLP. And we used to have the Royco nasty stuff, Army days, using the really pungent CLP. This is kind of like that, less solvent, more lubrication side. Next thing is the M Pro 7 LPX, which is really, really good stuff. It really stays, really like that stuff. And then we have your basic Birchwood Cassidy synthetic gun oil, and you can actually see it says lubricates, cleans, and protects. It doesn't have that as cleans, lubricates, and protects, because of course that would say CLP. So it's kind of funny how they do that. All 3, I've used all 3 in my AR and other ARs. I've had great success with all 3. With the solvents, there's a clear 2 winners here, but with the oils, I think you could go well with any of them. and you do a pretty good job. So anyway, that's the basics in terms of what you're going to need to clean an AR15, and let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do, of course, we're going to make sure it's unloaded. There's no magazine inserted and there's nothing in the chamber, and we can see that. And we're going to go ahead and make sure the weapon's unsafe, and of course, to get ourselves there, we're going to have the bolt forward. It's going to start in this position. I'm going to be pushing down on my bolt release. So as I'm pushing down, I'm not letting go. I'm pushing down on the smaller tab of my bolt release. And as I continue to hold that down, I'm going to grab my charging handle. I'm going to unlock it right here. I'm going to drag it back until it stops. And then I can let go of both items and it should be stuck just like that. And I can always, of course, push my charging handle forward. I can see that there's nothing in the chamber. And then I'm going to go ahead and push my bolt release to get the bolt back forward. Alright. Next thing I'm going to do, of course, I'm going to hit this pin right here. And I'm going to push out that pin. And as I push it out, I'm going to come over here. I'm just use a fingernail or a knife or whatever I need to and just pull out that pin. And of course, this pin is not meant to fully come out. It stays in battery. So it just clicks in or out just like that. This is called shotgunning the AR-15. And basically this is your basic maintenance configuration. I've just ripped it open just like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab my charging handle and I'm going to pull back on the charging handle and I'm going to stop about halfway. Alright, so I have to stop about halfway. And then I'm going to grab my bolt and I'm going to pull the bolt to the rear. Set that aside. And then the charging handle, I'm just going to have to mess with it and wait till on these wings right here, there's actually a, let me see if I can get this in focus. On these wings right here, you can see, look at that carbon just coming right off this thing. But on these wings right here, there's a cutout in the upper receiver where it floats in and out. And I'm going to put this back in. Okay, so you got to wait and you got to pull it out and then so you drop it down and then drag it out. Okay, now because of how dirty this thing is, and we can see it's a little bit nasty, and that's okay, I'm going to go ahead and pop off the upper receiver. So I'm just going to take this pin right here. I'm going to pop that in, and you might have to manipulate it or kind of wiggle with it, and that comes right off. Okay, so now I have my lower receiver and my upper receiver, just like such. Now for the sake of all the solvents and stuff going on, I'm actually going to take off what I don't need. So I have my light here, and then I have my rail segments I'll just take off so I can start blasting out my quad rail and whatnot. And pretty much this is what I have right here. Now I'm going to set these to the side. What I usually like to do, because my sling, of course you want to make sure when you put it back together that your sling is on the right way. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take off the stock. So I'm going to pull down and it comes right off. If you actually, you'll see it right there. You see that you pull down enough and then it comes off of the notches right there. Okay, so now I can work on one independently of the other. Now, because of how many rounds I know I've shot through this before since the last time I've cleaned it, I'm actually going to go ahead and take out the buffer and buffer spring. So what I'm going to do is there's that little takedown notch. Let's see if we get my focus going on. This little takedown notch right here. You want to make sure your hammer is to the rear position. And I'm going to take the tip of a brush or something, plastic or whatnot. I'm just going to push down on that detent. And as I push down, the spring is going to come out. I'm going to bring out my buffer. I'm just going to kind of wrangle out the buffer spring. Okay, now something important to note, you're going to want to make sure your hammer's forward sometimes when you're cleaning into the recesses of the lower receiver like such. But as you're doing that though, you want to make sure you put it on fire and then you coast your hammer forward. You want to make sure that you never actually let your hammer go ahead and discharge when there's no firing pin or bolt carrier assembly, because it's going to slam into this portion right here, your bolt release and your lower receiver. That's really not good. So we're going to go ahead and put this to the side. Alright, and keep my stuff organized here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take apart our bolt carrier. Okay, so my bolt carrier is right here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is take a pointy object or whatnot, and the first thing I got to do is my cotter pin, and I use my knife right here, and I basically get underneath and I just kind of pull this out just like such. Now usually you can do that with the fingernail. Some are easier than others, and this is your cotter pin. We're going to set that to the side. Next thing I do is I got to get my firing pin out, and the firing pin should just drop out of the rear of the carrier like such. Okay, going back to the stoner design situation, a lot of 90-degree angles involved, and that's just classic stoner. But I'm going to go ahead and take my cam right here, and you can see just how nasty this thing is. But I'm going to rotate my cam and it's a little dirty. Okay, so I just rotated that 90 degrees. Alright, I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to take it, and it should just, if it doesn't fall out like it did, I'm going to have to hit it and it should come out. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take my bolt and pull my bolt forward. And now you can see, and this is going to become a problem over time, but there's a lot of carbon built up on the piston head right here. And there actually is a lot of people say, oh, you know, AR should have a piston. And I tell them, well, it actually does. You just don't realize it. Gases come through here, which is your gas key. Excuse me, your gas key on your bolt carrier comes through. It pushes against the piston and it spans, and then the extra gases get vented out of those two holes right there. Okay, so there actually is a piston. It's just in here. Alright, so that's why there's so much carbon, and you can build up. You're going to make diamonds and whatnot right here. It's going to get so built up. Okay, so what you've seen now, I have my bolt carriers taken apart. The buffer and buffer spring are out of the AR itself. I have my charging handle here as well. I have my lower receiver with my hammer forward so I can get into all the details there. And then my upper receiver pretty much didn't do too much at all to it. I just took out the charging handle and the bolt carrier, but the upper receiver is going to stay as is. And of course I'm going to modify my gear so I can move it up and down or whatnot, take off the rail covers and whatnot, do whatever I have to do to get to the details. Alright guys, so something we didn't talk about is actually the extractor on the bolt. And this is your bolt here, and the extractor can come out, and it should if you fire it enough. Basic field stripping you won't really need to, but basically this pin that right here has to come out. So I'm going to take a pointy object such as a strong dental pick or whatnot. I'm actually going to push this through to the other side. Okay, so I'm starting to come out. I can basically get it to the point where I can pull it out. Some ARs are going to be a little easier than others, so basically you can see the pin is starting to come out. I'm very carefully going to pull this apart right here. And I should have this right here. I've got my extractor to the left and I have my bolt to the right. Alright guys, so much like any other gun design, it doesn't really matter where you start, but I'm going to start with the bolt, and I'm taking my blue brush and I'm basically going to start scrubbing this bolt all over the place. And there's definitely a lot of carbon that's built up all in and around it. I'm trying to get rid of all those brass flakes, so I'm using my blue brush to get kind of aggressive with my bolt, especially on the back end here where the carbon likes to build up back here on the tail end of the bolt. Alright guys, so we can see that carbon likes to build up on the tail end of the bolt right here. So, you know, my brush is not really going to do everything I need, so I'm going to go ahead and soak this in a little bit of my solvent, my cleaner, and this is what I'm going to use the knife for. And again, this is controversial. Some people agree with it, some people don't. I'm just going to take my knife and basically I'm going to go down the tail of the bolt, and as I'm doing this, you can see that carbon is starting to come off. And we can compare and check it out. You see how much carbon is starting to come off. And it's just me just basically going across and scraping the bolt very carefully. I'm not really digging too hard, just enough to scrape off that carbon. Alright guys, it doesn't hurt either to basically take my chamber brush or any other type of brush and just kind of scrub once I'm doing the knife to kind of scrape that carbon off. I'm also doing this to get rid of all the finer carbon and whatnot. So you just kind of keep going back, trial and error, until you start getting rid of all that carbon. Alright guys, I'm also going to clean out my bolt cam here, and especially the top. Sometimes carbon gets here, but this one is actually relatively carbon free for the most part compared to everything else. So I'm just going to brush it away, throw some solvent as needed, and I could take a Q-tip like such and just run that Q-tip through the channel here just to make sure there's nothing in there, and just kind of start to wipe it all off there. Alright, next thing I'm going to go ahead and get to is the charging handle, and it actually gets a little more dirty than you would think, just because the gas tube is sticking through it right there every shot. So if you run a Q-tip, it'll instantly get black, just all the way through, just like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and take a Q-tip and just clean all this off right here, and might have to use multiple Q-tips to get the job done. I'm just going to be running this through the channel here and doing what I can to just clean out anything, and especially towards the opening of the charging handle here and on top where the bolt and the charging handle interact. Basically just going to be cleaning what I can, and I'm going to clean off the top as well. Not a whole lot going on with the charging handle usually, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that. If I have to, I'll take a brush and I'll clean out these details here where the latch is, and especially in the indent right there. Clean out what I can really, but there's not a whole lot going on here. Now we got the bolt carrier, and this is honestly one of the more interesting parts. It's going to take a little bit of detail, and it may take a little bit of time depending on how much carbon you're okay with having in there, or if you just want everything out. The way I like to start is I take my cleaner and I'll spray it just kind of inside, all around in the gas key, everything like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my soft brush and I'm just going to start basically doing what I can on it on the front here. I'm going to take my smaller brush. I'm just going to scrub all inside. Now it's important to go inside. Remember that piston that we were talking about earlier, where of course this is where it's all going down. So this is like the engine block, and your bolt is like a cylinder if you were to compare that to a car pretty much. And I'm just cleaning out whatever I can. I'm doing the inside, I'm doing the outside. I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff off camera. Of course, I'm going to be cleaning this off. I've got some brass stripes on here. I've got some carbon in the recesses, and I'm also going to be worried about these inside areas on the rear where the firing pin, the head of the firing pin goes. I'm going to be worried about that because there is going to be carbon all over this, and there's going to be carbon in here on the channel and the bolt, everything like that. So I'm just going to spray this whole thing down and basically just do what I can to get it all out. And I'm going to go ahead and go off camera because this is going to take a little bit to get all the details. Okay, so it did a basic job in the bolt carrier, but we still got work to do. I'm going to start by in the recesses here where the magazine goes. I'm basically just going to go ahead and take a Q-tip and get all the solvent and all the carbon, anything that's left in there. I'll just take it out of there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Q-tip. I'm just going to get in these recesses here, try to do what I can, but we're going to get a patch in there later. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Q-tip and run it through the gas key, at least to get whatever I can. You can see how much carbon is just hiding in this thing. And again, like I said, this bolt carrier is usually going to take a little bit of time to get everything out. And you know, this is where a Cat M4 tool may be helpful with the gas key, or gas carrier, excuse me. And you can see, look at all that carbon just coming right out. Again, I'm going to go off camera and just take some more time with it. But before I do, I want to show you where we're going to start doing our dental pick now. I'm going to grab this cleaning patch. I'm going to grab my dental pick, and I'm going to get to work off camera, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I'm taking this first, and I'm using a dental pick very carefully inside the back of the bolt carrier like this, and I'm going to start scrubbing. It may take a couple different patches and whatnot, and I'm just going to get at it from all angles. I'm just going to get in there and just start etching away at the corners and whatnot, and you can already see right there how much carbon is just coming out of this thing just from that. So I'm going to work on that off camera, and then the second cleaning patch thing I'm doing is I'm basically going to put this on top and push that down in there, and I'm going to be working on the corners and whatnot. Now here I have to be a little more careful. I don't want to scratch the chrome lining. I don't want to scratch the finish or anything like that, but I'm just going to be doing what I can to be careful, and you can see how much carbon there is coming out as well. So again, I'm going to go off camera and do that, but you want to look into doing that for sure. Alright guys, so I went back inside, did some detail cleaning with the patches, mainly in this area right here where the firing pin shroud is, all of that, and I cleaned inside, deep inside the bolt carrier here. You can always look, you can take your flashlight, you can always check in there and just kind of get basically a view of the deep inside of what it looks like. If you have to, you can keep working with the dental pick, you can take your Q-tips, you can go around the rim on the inside there, all inside the channel and whatnot. And you know, this just seems like the more carbon you take out, the more there still is going to be. So you just do what you can to kind of clean up everything, but what you're going to do next, you can take your pipe cleaner and you're going to run it through the gas key. Okay, and you're basically just going to run it in there to get the carbon out of everything that comes in. Now the gas key, of course, it goes in and it has a hole right here where, of course, the gases go in and create the piston effect. Alright, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to clean underneath. I'll let my camera get in focus there. But I'm going to clean underneath right here, all the little details and whatnot. And there we go. Come on, get in focus. And basically everything else you can see here. And I'm going to start cleaning these venting holes right here. Start cleaning those out. I'm going to clean through my pinholes, everything like that. A lot of carbon actually builds up there. Most people don't realize. You can already see how much carbon is starting to come out. And I'm already starting to acquire a pretty nice pile of Q-tips and whatnot. So basically just working on all these holes and whatnot, cleaning them out. and you can see just how much carbon is just coming out of this thing. And you just want to keep working with that until you get it all done. And you also want to clean your channel here. This is where the buffer retention pin is in the back of the lower receiver. That's where it makes clearance. So you're cleaning everything here, just trying to get it all done. Alright guys, next we're going to work on our firing pin. And I'm just going to go ahead and spray a little bit of cleaner and whatnot. I'm just going to brush out basically what I can. I may have to go back with the knife or the dental pick and just kind of scratch off a little carbon. Again, I want to be careful because it's, you know, plated or lined and it's titanium, and I just don't want to scratch it. Now I'm going to switch to my blue brush, get a little tougher on it, and just try to brush it out, especially on the inside rim. Right here on the inside rim gets a little bit stacked with carbon. I'm going to do what I can with either that or the knife blade to kind of get it out. Alright guys, so today I'm going to use the M-Pro 7, the LPX stuff. Going to give it a nice good shake, make sure it's good. Brake free is excellent, keep that in the range bag. But I don't like to over oil my ARs, I just don't like to do that. So with the brake free I got to have that tube, that straw on it so it goes where I want it to. Or I can get the tube bottles, I guess. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my extractor back together. And I'm just going to go ahead and put my pin back in the hole right there, just like such. And we can see, you know, if we're looking at areas that we should lubricate, we're definitely going to put a little bit of lubrication in our extractor. So I'm just going to drop some lubrication, and that's a little bit more than I need right there. But I'm going to drop some lubrication in there, probably mop up what I don't need with a Q-tip here. And then I'm going to actuate basically my ejector there. I'm going to actuate that up and down to basically go ahead and get some of that lubrication in there and wipe off the excess. Use a Q-tip to get rid of the excess there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lubricate this ring right here. Tends to be very shiny because it takes a lot of the rubbing and whatnot. So I'm just going to finger lube that. I don't really like to put too much on there. Put a little bit of thin coat just so it's barely visible, just enough all over the bolt itself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert that into my bolt carrier, and of course make sure my extractor is to the right and my ejector is to the left when I'm looking at it from a top view. Make sure my hole's already lined up. Then I'm going to take my bolt carrier and right now just put a little bit of thin coat right there, and I'm going to put that into the channel. Again, I'm going to utilize those stoner 90-degree angles there. Okay, now that it's actually in there, this is one of the areas you want to lubricate a little bit heavily. I'm just going to drop a whole bunch of lubricant in there and basically work it in just like that. I'm going to kind of very, very, very lightly rub a little bit of this into basically the surface there, so it's kind of porous, it takes it in. Alright, so I have this. Then what I'm going to do is make sure I realign that because it got itself out. We're going to leave it there. Take my firing pin, just a very, very slight amount, just enough to coat the whole thing. And then I'm going to go ahead and drop with making sure that my bolt cam is the way that it is, oriented perpendicular to the bolt carrier. I'm going to go ahead and push it forward. It can be rearward. And I'm going to go ahead and just push my firing pin. It's very important to make sure it goes all the way to the collar here, all the way down. I like to take my finger, push it down. I'll take my cotter pin, just a little bit of oil. Again, we don't really need a whole lot. And very carefully put that in place. Now here's where you want to be careful. You just want to guide your cotter pin into the hole. If you're a little aggressive with it or whatnot, it may actually open up the legs of the cotter pin and make it harder, or possibly break it if you're really aggressive with it. Okay, so right now we are going to oil this up on strategic areas before we actually put it back into the gun. But for right now, everything's pretty good. I'm going to leave this to the side because I got bigger things to worry about right now. Alright, something I didn't show is actually a 12 gauge brush or bore snake. And it's not really needed, that's why I didn't show it. But I'm going to take my cleaner and just give it a little bit on this. And I'm just going to go through my buffer tube spring here. And I'm just going to do this. It's actually a perfect fit. Just clean the inside of the coils there. Spread a bunch of solvent everywhere. And I'm just going to go ahead and take my cloth and just kind of clean it all up. Just like that. Now, there's not a whole lot of carbon that gets in here. Just enough to make me want to do that. Maybe once in a while, but I don't really need to do that all the time. And I'm just going to simply take my buffer here. Just kind of wipe it down. Shouldn't really be any problems with the carbon, but one of the reasons why you kind of want to do this maybe every time is just to kind of inspect and make sure everything's looking the way it should. No damage or anything like that. And take that, throw a little bit of lubrication like that, just kind of rub it all over this unit. It's already self-lubricating to an extent. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there and just get it ready to go. And just like the charging handle and the complete bolt carrier, I'm just going to put that to the side because I got to worry about other things right now. Alright, so I kind of like to pace myself and start a little bit easier and work towards the harder end. So basically I have my lower receiver here. What I'm really basically going to be doing is taking my brush, and I just soak my brush in solvent, and basically what I'm going to be doing is, it's really just an exterior job. But I'm just taking my brush, I'm cleaning all that dust out. And of course you don't really need to do this unless you get it dirty like you saw it in the beginning of the video. But basically what I'm going to be doing is going down. I have this, I'll clean this out if this collects a little dirt every now and then. I've got basically, let's see if I get my camera in focus here. That's becoming a problem. I think it's the lighting. But you can see right here I've got just dirt caked into all the details. So all the details all over the gun, the trigger guard and everything, I'm going to get that all cleaned out. So I'm going to do that off camera, but you just want to at least externally get all the dust off. Alright guys, so don't forget to clean out this area here just a little bit there. Cleaning out all the little details. It's already starting to look a lot better. And just cleaning out the mag well, all the different details and areas of it, and just keep working with it. Alright guys, so I'm going to throw some oil on the insides here, and basically I like to put a lot of oil on a Q-tip, not a whole lot, but just enough where it's pretty saturated. And what I do is I just kind of rub that on the springs, the surfaces where the sear is going to kind of meet up with the disconnector and whatnot. And basically do what I can to keep this a little bit lubricated up. It doesn't require a whole lot, and I honestly don't like to put a whole lot in here. Just enough to keep things kind of oiled up and things running how they should. And that's really about all I need to do right there. Alright, so we finally made it to the upper receiver. And you know, if you thought you saw carbon in the bolt carrier, it's only going to get worse. And I generally like to clean from the outside in. As you can see, I've got some dirt going on here. I just like to brush it away, use some solvent. I can use some brake free, I can use some brake cleaner, I can use some gun scrubber, stuff like that. Not a bad idea. Of course, I don't want to take apart this quad rail. I'm not going to take apart this quad rail at all unless I'm replacing it or whatnot. So I'm basically just going to spray in there with some brake cleaner if I have it. Basically, I don't really like to do that. I'll spray in some brake free or whatnot. But I'm just going to use my brush and just go to town on this thing. Clean all the external sources. Another thing we got to look for is we got to clean the inside of our A2 bird cage here. We're just going to clean all that in the inside, but we want to be very careful not to nick the crown of the barrel itself. I've got basically dust and whatnot all over my EOTech, and we're going to clean all this out. And I have noticed put my EOTech here, some carbon is on the bottom from the gas tube. So I'm going to do whatever I can to clean the outside. Certainly don't want to hit any of my adjustments right here while I'm trying to clean. And I'm going to take my rear sight, and with my rear sight I'll clean what I can. I'll flip it up, I'll clean there. So I'll clean basically all the external surfaces, and then I'll go for the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright guys, and the phrase of the day here is attention to detail. We're just going to be every single nook and cranny, every single surface, every single vent in this bird cage, flash suppressor, everything that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be basically paying attention to detail, trying to scrub it out. I'll even take a Q-tip if I have to, bring it down in here, clean this out, because I know even if I jam it up against the crown of the barrel, I'm not going to damage it at all. I'm going to take a Q-tip in between each different cut here, and Q-tip basically wherever I need to, but I'm just going to clean every single nook and cranny. It's already starting to look a little bit better here, but I got more work to do. Alright guys, so pretty much handled virtually most of the exterior. It looks a lot better than it did. Pretty much got all the dust handled. I got to wipe off some oil and whatnot, but pretty much made it look a lot better than what it started as. So basically took care of whatever I could here. And now we're going to start the actual cleaning of the upper receiver itself. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm basically in this channel here. I'm just going to start by, I'm going to close up my dust cover, and I'm just going to spray full force into there, and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time here with a brush, just kind of cleaning out everything inside and whatnot. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go inside the actual bolt channel, and I'm just going to clean everything out the best that I can. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to get everything this way, but at least this is going to free up most of the problems and be able to at least free up some carbon, so I can go ahead and take care of that afterwards. And of course, the brush is the perfect size. It runs right through this channel, and I'm just going to do whatever I can. You can see how black and dark that carbon is, so I'm just going to start working with that for a little bit. Alright guys, so now I'm going to go ahead and bring out my chamber brush, and again, this is such a valuable thing to have, whether you're a rod guy or a bore snake guy. I'm going to soak this thing pretty liberally with my solvent of choice, and I'm just going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is, of course, coming from this direction, I'm going to go inside, and I'm basically going to keep bringing it out, and as it's in there, I'm going to rotate it around. Some guys will actually put these on a power drill and clean it out, which is honestly not a bad idea. That's one way you can do it. Some people would see that as controversial, but you can really clean an M16 that way, or an AR15. But basically, I'm just going to do this. I can pretty much get most of the coverage I can. And again, there's oil and whatnot in there, or excuse me, solvent and whatnot. So now I'm basically going to take my time, and I'm going to clean out whatever I can, use Q-tips, use dental picks, clean underneath the gas tube, clean all inside the star chamber, use dental picks and Q-tips to clean everything out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so this is one of the reasons why I like a dental pick. And basically I'm using that dental pick, and I'm getting basically a cloth patch in there. I'm getting it underneath the gas tube and around everything. And I'm just going to use that Q-tips, dental pick, everything to get inside there. Alright guys, so what I'm going to be doing is taking the star chamber, and I'm going to take a cleaning patch here, and I'm basically going to go inside the star chamber, through the ejection port, and through the bottom of the upper receiver, and I'm basically just going to be in there digging around very carefully. I mean, it's steel, and I know I'm really not going to harm it at all, and I'm just kind of going in there, I'm digging around. A lot of the stuff I'm going to have to do is really off camera, because it's going to take some detailed work, and I've already spent about 20 minutes off of camera just getting the rest of the receiver. So I'm just kind of digging around, I'm cleaning up, I'm mopping up any of the solvent that's in there. I'm going to take out, you know, that, and I'm going to take my Q-tips, and I'm basically going to enter in through the ejection port and clean what I can, clean through the bottom of the receiver, and basically just try to mop up anything that's in there, and get all the carbon kind of around the areas too. And I'm basically just working inside, just trying to get anything I can out. So this is a little bit of an intensive process, takes a little time. I'm just going to spend some time off camera working on it. Alright guys, so I spent a little bit of time here off camera, maybe that's an understatement, and I've been working on the star chamber. It looks pretty nice in there. The rest of the external, the upper receiver, everything's pretty nice, getting all that dirt out, getting all that carbon out. One thing I didn't say is make sure your front side, you're just brushing that out too. Again, is attention to detail. There's just all over this thing, there's details you gotta attend to. And now we get to the barrel. And of course, that's where we draw a lot of our accuracy from, is going to come from the barrel, and maintaining a good quality barrel that's up to snuff, that it can deliver stuff accurately downrange. Now, if you want to do the rods and whatnot, you're going to assemble your rods, and what you're basically going to do is you're going to take your 22 caliber brush on the end of your rods, and you are definitely going to be approaching through the rear of the receiver, just like such. And you're basically going to do everything through the receiver just like that. Now, my method with the brushes and the rods and whatnot is I do solvent on the end of the brush. I go through, I take it out, I clean off the brush with a rag, and then I'll go ahead and I'll get here and I'll run a patch through. I'll put my patch through this, and it's very important to make sure we have the right size patch, 22 caliber patches, which are going to be about this size. That's what I've been using this whole time. Alright, and I'm basically going to alternate. I'm going to go from the brush portion, and then I'm going to clean that part off, and then I'm going to go to the patch portion. So I'm just going to keep alternating until it starts to come out clear. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll run a jag through with a patch on it that has oil on it to coat the whole barrel in oil. So if I'm doing the rod method, that's how I'm going to do it. But I'm going to be doing things with a bore snake. And of course, a bore snake consists of a weighted portion, It goes through and basically shortcuts the process. Still does a quality job though. I have my double brush portion here. It goes through. All this works as patch, and if I really want to, I can put a patch on the end. Now, this is what in the beginning of the video I said you have to be careful, and I've actually seen it happen where an M16 gets plugged up because too much patch was put on this, and the soldier tried to pull, and it got stuck in the chamber, and he couldn't pull any further because basically the thing was just stuck, and he couldn't pull it out from the star chamber because it was too deep in the chamber to reach with a Gerber or multi-tool. So, you know, you want to be very careful with any firearm. If you're using a bore snake, they're great tools. I think they do a good job, but that is kind of my safety warning here. Just to make sure you don't just plug up your barrel, is you want to make sure if you're going to choose to use a patch at all, you make sure it's the right size patch. Okay, that's my huge little safety warning there, but if that is the case, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and tilt this up-ended like that, and through the bottom of the receiver I'm basically just going to put my weighted portion in there, and I'm just going to feed it through. Now I'm going to have to kind of push it down with gravity as it goes through, and depending on how old the bore snake is. If the bore snake, if I've been using it a while, this paracord here is actually going to start to stretch and get thinner, so it's not going to be as hard to put this through the barrel. Usually it just drops down through. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Alright guys, so I got it to the point now where it came out the other end, and I basically got it to the point where I can pull some through. So I'm going to take my barrel, I'm going to pull just a little bit through, just enough to really get it stuck. Alright, so now it's stuck right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cleaning solvent and I'm basically going to coat the brush end. I like to coat the brush end just like that. Not being very conservative, just letting it go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just pull it through the barrel. You can actually see it twisting as the twist rate affects it. You'll see that loop right there. Okay. So now I have it just like such, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it through. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, if we want to check and see how clean or not clean it is, I'm going to go ahead and pull it through all the way until just that last portion right there, just exposing that. And what I'm going to do, this is a 22 caliber brush portion here, or sorry, patch. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to set it up just like that and kind of guide it into, it's easy for it to fall off. Making sure it's clean so I have something to compare it to. I'm going to go ahead and just pull it through the system. Alright, so we can see that basically this is only after 2 passes and it's pretty much there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some lubrication on it. I'm going to put the bore snake back through, and we always want to put the barrel with a little bit light coat of oil in it, and what I can do is take some brake free, and that's probably more than I needed, but that's alright, I'll just get rid of the excess. So the whole end right here is coated in brake free or my lubricant of choice, and then I'm basically just going to go ahead and pull it through. Alright, and that's going to be it for the barrel. That's why I like a bore snake, and the cool thing about a bore snake is you can roll it up, put it in your range bag, basically do whatever you got to do with it. And there's a little bit of oil in the chamber, so I'm just going to take my Q-tip and basically just mop that up. Alright, so the order that I do this in is not necessarily important, but I'm basically going to put the charging handle, bolt, and everything back in there and then snap the gun back together. I could snap the gun halfway back together, do it, so it doesn't really matter how I do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my charging handle, I'm going to throw some oil just right here. I'm just going to use the thumb to kind of spread it on the rails here. Spread a little bit. Don't need to go excessive. You know, I really don't like to oil up an AR too much. Everyone seems to have their own theory. You know, he asked 5 guys and there's 10 different opinions. So that's my opinion. Not very much oil. Okay, and a little bit of oil goes a long way, especially with the charging handle and everything else on this rifle. Alright, so I'm going to take the charging handle, I'm going to insert where the bolt goes through, and as I'm doing that I'm pushing up on it until it clicks in its place. I'm going to go about halfway. Okay, now before I insert the bolt, I'm going to go ahead and lubricate it. Really the only parts, at least in my opinion, I have to worry about are going to be the bolt cam, which we already put a lot of lubrication in there. So basically it's pretty smooth, pretty oiled up. I have to make sure, of course, when I'm putting the bolt in, that the bolt is in the forward position instead of the rear. So we got to make sure the bolt is fully deployed forward. So now there's these 4 rails, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see the wear here. This is what actually contacts the upper receiver. So I'm just going to take my rails here. I'm just going to finger glide some oil on it. Okay, I don't need to spray the bolt carrier in oil, but I'm basically just going to take that and just kind of spread the oil on those rails. Okay, and then just kind of thinly coat the rest of it, just so it's barely visible, but just enough for rust prevention in case it gets wet or whatnot. Okay, don't need a whole lot elsewhere. And then what I'm going to do, of course, the bolt's in the forward position. I'm going to put that in and then just go ahead and insert it home. Alright, next thing I'm going to do, I'll just close up my dust cover. And I'm going to go ahead and take my lower. Now I've already oiled up the parts on the inside. I can throw just a little bit of oil here on my receiver pins, and just kind of with the finger, just kind of apply everything else I need. Kind of work it in a little bit just to make sure it's all good. Not a whole lot needed here. Okay, so I'm going to put my buffer back into the tube system here, and I already coated it in oil, so I'm just going to push it in there till it clicks. Really nothing to that. Making sure that the hammer is back, and it helps to have it on safe just in case, because we are putting the gun back together. Alright, so now I have my upper and my lower. Just going to go ahead and snap it just like that. Okay, so at least I have most of it back together, and this is what I have right now with no stock. And I like to take off the stock just to aim it up with the sling. So I'm going to bring it in here, make sure that the sling is how it should be, and once it is, I'll just go ahead, I just lift up on that tab right there, and as I lift up, I can bring the AR back into it. Alright, so now we're going to do a function check. We're going to make sure, of course, that it's empty, and we know it is, but we're going to double check that. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to release the bolt. I'm going to flip the weapon on fire, and I'm going to, in the safe direction, I'm going to pull the trigger, and I'm going to leave the trigger held down. Okay, so now I'm going to charge the weapon. I'm going to let go of the trigger, and when I do that, you should hear a click, and discharge it again. Okay, we've just simulated basically the firing cycle of the weapon. We understand now that it is put back together, and everything's pretty good to go. Alright guys, so we got the AR15 clean on the outside and the inside. It's going to be functional for us. Basically I put my gear back on, my flashlight, the rail covers and stuff, just because I don't need that anymore. And now it was easier to clean, now they're back on, and you can see I've amassed a pretty nice pile of Q-tips, patches, and basically pipe cleaners, everything else I'm going to need here. So the rifle's clean, it's oiled up, should be ready to go for the next time. Thanks for watching.